Gold is up, silver is up, and everyone's talking about de-dollarization like the dollar's done for and that America is cooked, but not so fast. I've been following one of the top economists in the world, Martin Armstrong, and his latest insights really surprised me. He's been dead on about global trends before, and what he's predicting now, it's not just about money or markets, it's about war, power, and whether the US dollar actually survives and what's coming next to fade. Gold, the global lifeboat. Here's something you won't hear much about on the news. Gold is quietly making a comeback. Central banks around the world, especially in the East, have been on a historic gold buying spree. They're underweighting US treasuries and loading up on gold, like they know something big is coming. China, Russia, India, even Saudi Arabia, they're all shifting reserves into hard money. Why? Because governments can break promises, but gold doesn't. Gold can't be printed, it can't be devalued with a keystroke. It's the ultimate hedge against debt, war, and currency collapse. And Armstrong says the world is beginning to see it that way again. Even here in the US, we're seeing signs. Physical gold demand is surging, supply is tight, premiums are rising, and retail investors, maybe for the first time in years, are starting to pay attention. Now, it's not about getting rich quick, it's about protecting what you have in a world that suddenly feels unstable again. According to Armstrong, the nations that survive what's coming will be the ones holding real assets, not debt-based promises. And that's why gold is back in the spotlight, because it holds its value when paper currencies and governments don't.
BRICS currency, and when that happens, God help us in this country. The reclassification gold tier 1 is huge. Just to touch on that for 1 second, everyone in my industry always thought that if anything ever rose to the level of dollar prominence, it would be something like a special drawing rights from the IMF. Maybe it makes a little more sense why the central banks are accumulating and taking possession of the gold because of its riskless elevated tier 1 status. So anyways, the dollar was backed by gold as far as governments were concerned. We promise that any of the gold that we're holding for you, you can exchange your dollars, or even just the dollars that you own. You can exchange them for gold at a fixed rate of $35 whenever you want. Towards the end of the Vietnam War, President de Gaulle from France realized that we were issuing more dollars and treasuries to fund the war than we had gold backing these promises. So he sent warships filled with dollars to New York Harbor and said to, President Nixon, we want our gold back for these dollars. And we gave it to him. And he bled down a very large portion of the gold held at the U.S. Treasury. And at that moment, Nixon said, okay, August of 1971, that's it. The window's closed temporarily, although it's never opened back up. But we went back on our promise to the world. And it was at that moment that the dollar was backed by nothing. And so the question that I ask the people out there, and it's amazing how few people know the answer to this question, is what has made the dollar the world reserve currency ever since? And you get a myriad of answers, usually centered around our military, or we have the biggest and most robust economy, or whatever. And I guess you could argue some of that is true. But what has made the dollar the world reserve currency was that 3 years later, Henry Kissinger was dispatched to Saudi Arabia. And he made a promise to the Saudis. He said, how about this? We will back you. Well, let's call it a joint military cooperation agreement. And we will stand behind you. We'll provide you munitions and support. No one will ever mess with the Saudi kingdom. But for that, OPEC is going to value oil in dollars globally. Okay, they said, fine. And so since 1974, every single country on the planet has had to own, virtually every country has had to own dollars in order to buy oil. And it has created this synthetic demand for the dollar called the petrodollar and made the dollar the world reserve currency. If you want to power your country, you must own dollars. It is the protection of the Saudi kingdom, and by default, the relationship with OPEC that has enabled the dollar to be the world reserve since 1974, because 3 years prior, the link to gold was severed. The dollar was at that point fiat, backed by nothing. And obviously, we all know the history. Since that point, the dollar's lost over 90% of its value.
Four overnight currency revaluations in the U.S. You think it hasn't happened before because they don't want you to know this, but that is just history. The first overnight devaluation was at 10%, and now I'm going back to the 70s, but the first overnight devaluation was roughly a 10% devaluation. Not super noticeable. And the real next move, more than 10%. And that was just barely more than a year later. The revaluation wasn't about increasing gold's value. Not at all. It was about devaluing the dollar to reflect its declining purchasing power and to help the U.S. manage its growing trade deficits and inflation. Because if the dollar is weaker against other currencies, it makes the goods that we export seem cheaper. Even today, the U.S. Treasury still lists gold at $42.22 per ounce on its book, which is why this new American Eagle has a face value of $50. You can't buy it for $50, but did you ever wonder why? Because officially, gold is still held at $42.22. When asked what the devaluation has to do and hide what was really happening, and he just talked in circles, and nobody could understand him, so that was Fed speak.
It's a type of activity which forces economists like ourselves to be acutely aware of the fact that our actions have consequences, and it's crucially important for us to try to determine in advance what those consequences are. And that is a challenge which I must say to you is, as I said to the president before, it's like eating peanuts. You keep doing it, and you never get tired because the future is always ultimately unknowable.
Clearly, wise leadership from the Fed has played a very large role in our strong economy.
But what I'm really hoping is that you recognize those same patterns that is happening today. Those cryptocurrencies and how they're created and managed, that programmable money, that's like Fed speak.
As I said to the president before, it's like eating peanuts.
All it does is confuse you. People don't understand it. Well, when you don't understand what's happening, how many times can you be lied to? Do you think you might be taken advantage? Has the global de-dollarization movement been stopped by this Genius Act that seeks to create that new artificial market for dollars and treasuries? Well, we're certainly about to find out. But the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, which is a central banker's central bank, they tell us, again, I remind you, that unlike currencies, unlike debt, which is simply a claim on foreign governments or institution, gold kept at home is not subject to political manipulation, and it is the only financial asset that runs zero counterparty risk.
I could say they are absolutely true words and should be taken seriously, folks. I have nothing to add to the excellent explanations provided by each of these esteemed economists. However, I just want to offer you a piece of advice. Afterwards, you will make your own decision. Now, the common point in this statement is that someone outside is preparing to intervene the monetary system they control. Could this be called Great Reset? Well, they have done it in the past. Do you think could they do it nowadays again? Who are the ones controlling all of this? By power, it is not me, and I know it is not you either. Then who controls the world financial system and wants to keep this power on their hands constantly. Not we. Wait a second. These two. And who controls them behind the scenes? Not we. I think this bad guy, he is the one controls them. Actually, he is not, but they are. Dear friend, you may be a gold investor, a gold jewelry manufacturer, company owner, a gold trader who earns his living through activities in the precious metal industry. It is your responsibility to take all necessary measures to protect your business against the upcoming economic storm. As a businessman, I believe that you wouldn't want the business which you have built in a long period of time with a great effort and ruins by the others and slip away from your hands. Therefore, you should take immediate action and prevent this thing happen. What does it mean this for you? As a gold businessman, what basically you are looking for to purchase the raw material with the good deal and price. And where can be still this happen? Right here in the blessed continent Africa. It is time for you to understand this wake-up call and start to establish a serious business relationship with the Africa countries and work with the reliable supply chain service providers like me, like my superior, with Mrs. Wilhelmina Ford. She has been already over 16 years in the service in the west part of Africa, in Sierra Leone, in Guinea, and as well as in Mali. Dear friend, if you look at the number what we have on the gold, you may guess and think about seriously for 2026. Okay, here are the price for today. We are trying to keep you on the safe and winning side. If you establish a serious business relationship with us, you will definitely reach your target and you will stay on the safe board. I thank you, each every one of you who found me in the YouTube channel. I'm Ramiz. I'm based in Izmir city of Turkey, and my superior, Mrs. Wilhelmina Ford, she is based in Brisbane city of Queensland state in Australia. If you might have any question, please kindly get in touch with us. We can clarify it for you. Okay, have a safe and wonderful day. Bye.